Hello again, football fans, and welcome back to the RFL team draft previews series. I'm going into the Toronto Huskies draft preview here. Again, the RFL draft kicks off round one Friday night over at the RFL YouTube channel. And so the Toronto Huskies, I guess I'll just start by saying I'm a little bit disappointed in the amount of draft picks that they have, and I guess I should preface this by saying they have the appropriate amount of draft picks. They have their own pick in each of the 7 rounds. So they have the 13th overall pick, and they have the 13th pick in every round, 1 through 7. So they have 7 draft picks total. I guess what I mean by this is, when I look at the Toronto Huskies roster, and I'm gonna share my screen and pull it up with you guys so that we can kind of go over it together. When I look at the Toronto Huskies roster, I see an age cliff, and I also see a lot of pending free agents at the end of this coming season. And so, what I would have loved to have seen the Huskies do is try to stockpile a little bit more, right? Like maybe you have to mortgage a little bit of the present to try to get ahead of any kind of potential rebuild. And so let me go ahead and share my screen here and kind of show you guys what I'm talking about and what my thought process is through some of this. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And let's see, give you guys an idea of what we're looking at here with the Toronto Huskies. So I'll go ahead and make it a little bit bigger for you. So when I look at the Toronto Huskies, right, like let's just start from the top, right? They've got the quarterback, Calvin Poole, phenomenal. He will be their franchise quarterback. He will be there for as long as they can afford him and as long as they want him. They've also got Corey Leonidas at the running back. So they've got some firepower immediately on offense. Then you look at the tight end position. They've got Hudson Johnston, who is a 26-year-old, 84 overall with StarDev. So they've got a bona fide, starting caliber, good quality tight end. And then they've also got a 76 backup at tight end. So I don't really see any huge needs right there. Then we get into receiver, and this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. And when I mentioned a minute ago about the age cliff that the Huskies are about to, they're about to reach the summit of this age cliff. You've got Keith Guyton, who's 31 years old, phenomenal, will be a no doubt future RFL Hall of Famer, but he's 31 years old. You've got Tyrese Maxwell. He's also 31 years old. And then you got Isaiah Streets, 25. Great. You've got Emmanuel Vick, 23 years old. He's a 75 overall. So that's a guy that could grow and develop. And when Tyrese Maxwell and Keith Guyton are gone, maybe that's what they look to do. But maybe that's not what they look to do. Maybe with the 13th pick in the draft, they want to go ahead and they want to get that stud wide receiver that is going to be that number 1 receiver into the future. Because again, Tyrese Maxwell gone pretty soon. Keith Guyton gone pretty soon. Isaiah Streets could probably be that number 1, right? He is going to be that number 1 as long as he's there. So do they like Emmanuel Vick to be that number 2, or do they potentially look at the wide receivers in the draft and at 113 maybe look at that wide receiver, or maybe not in the first round, maybe at 213 or at 313. So don't be surprised if at some point the Huskies look to go wide receiver, because again, that age cliff is coming for the wide receivers. Then you look at the offensive line, right? And we have a little bit of the same thing here with the offensive line, but it's not quite as bad. And we all know that the offensive line guys can go into their early and sometimes even mid 30s. So you've got William Milne, who is an 86 overall, 30 years old. But the problem that you run into with Milne is where I'm going to go back here a second. So if you go back to the actual roster and you look at the potential free agents, the pending free agents, the guys that are in a walk year, right? Like these are the guys that are going to be free agents at the end of the year. And when you look at the Toronto Huskies, well, there's that man, William Milne, right? 86 overall left tackle. Well, he's a free agent at the end of the year, and he's 30 years old. So are they going to bring him back? Or do they look to replace him in the draft? You've also got Calvin Lumsford, who is your edge rusher, 84 overall. He's a potential free agent at the end of the year. Robert Staymates at safety, potential free agent. Nathan Schmidt, defensive tackle. Javonte Gibson, another potential free agent at the end of the year. And so when you look at these names, Javonte Gibson, William Milne, Calvin Lunsford, Robert Staymates, Nathan Schmidt, right? Let's look at those 5 names on the Huskies roster and what those guys mean to them currently as the roster is constructed. So now we go back to the depth chart of the Huskies here. Okay, and let's take a look. So there's William Milne, again, free agent at the end of the year if they're not going to re-sign him. Well, he's 30 years old and he's an 86 overall. So you kind of want to re-sign him, but maybe he's asking for too much. Maybe you don't want to re-sign him. Maybe he's just asking for so much money and it's not worth re-signing him. Maybe he regresses, right? Like, so you could potentially, if you're the Huskies, look at replacing Milne. So they could go offensive tackle. But then you also look at the defensive line. And here's where it gets interesting because Calvin Lumsford, 33 years old, free agent at the end of the year, got to assume that they're going to let him walk. Nathan Schmidt, 33 years old, free agent at the end of the year, got to assume that they're going to let him walk. And even if they don't let those 2 guys walk, they're likely going to regress quite a bit. And at 84 overall and 81 overall right now, what does a regression hit look like for those guys? And are they even starting caliber players if regression hits going into season 11? So do you address an edge rushing position? Again, 13th pick in the draft. Do you go offensive tackle if you want to replace Milne? Do you go edge rusher? Do you go defensive tackle? And then you've also got Javonte Gibson. So Javonte Gibson was another big name there. And Robert Staymates. Robert Staymates, 33 years old. What is that going to look like? Are they going to re-sign him? And then Javonte Gibson, again, 33 years old. Are you getting the trend here? There is an age cliff coming for the Toronto Huskies. And so all the way back to my beginning point, I just would have liked for the Huskies to have more than 7 picks in the draft, right? Especially when you got to figure the 6th and 7th round guys and maybe even the 5th round guys, those are probably not going to be anything more than depth players unless you can develop them. And it's going to take time to develop those guys that you're getting in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round. And so for the Huskies, when all you have is your own pick, you're basically looking at the first 3 rounds. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say 4 rounds of the draft. So you've got the 13th pick in the first 4 rounds, and let's just assume those are the guys. Well, we've just established you've either got to re-sign 33-year-old guys who are going to regress, or you've got to replace them. So we are talking about a safety in Robert Staymates. We're talking about a corner in Javonte Gibson. And then again, we're talking about edge rushers in Lunsford and then defensive tackle in Schmidt. And then all the way back up to the offensive line in William Milne, right? So if you take all of that, that's just guys that are aging, that are potential free agents at the end of the year. And so for my money, that's where I would assume that the Huskies are looking. Guys that are going to be free agents, guys that are regressing, guys that are aging. Let's get someone in-house now to replace those guys. And so if we go and we take a look at prospect rankings, right? Like let's go ahead and take a peek at Pecan and his prospect rankings that Pecan released. And we're not going to look at the quarterback position because we know that they have the quarterback position locked up. You could start to look at wide receiver, right? Like we talked about some of those receivers getting a little bit older. The 13th pick overall. Well, chances are Dior Gore is not going to be there, but a guy like Steve McCaskill, maybe he's available at 13. Could the Huskies go Steve McCaskill at 13 overall? I don't know that he's going to be there in the second round, but maybe they don't want to take a receiver in the first round, and maybe they look to take a receiver in round 2. And now you're looking at guys like maybe a Trevon Simpson, maybe a Talon Ross, Mamadou Sanyalu, like all the way down to probably Talon Ross. I would say those top 5 guys would obviously remove Dior Gore. So between McCaskill, Simpson, Sanyalu, and Ross, whoever you like more, I think are potentially in play if the Huskies wanted to go receiver in round 2. And then if they wanted to look at, again, some of those guys that are aging on the offensive line, defensive line, right? Like, here's some guys. Now, at 13 overall, I think you could potentially be looking at the first offensive tackle or maybe the second offensive tackle. I don't think we're going to see a lot of offensive tackles taken in the early to mid first round. I think there's some depth at the offensive tackle position. And I think that the interior offensive linemen, there are some guys there that are better options. So unless you are desperate for an offensive tackle in the top, 10, 12, 15 picks, I don't know that we're going to see that many offensive tackles taken before the likes of a Casey Chestnut or even a Cesar Davis, right? But again, we saw William Milne. He's regressing. He's aging out. We could possibly see the Huskies look to address the offensive tackle position. And again, they don't have to do that in round 1. They could do that in round 2. And because there's some depth at the offensive tackle position, I look at the offensive tackles in kind of like a clump, in like a tier. And I really do feel like there are 6 or 7 guys in that sort of top tier. And maybe you like Cody Nelson, maybe you like Greg Dunham, maybe you like Chuck Bynum or Trip Zimmer a little bit more than Anthony Moore, Brett Sloan, Sonny Daniels, but I don't know that the gap is all that great. And so for the Huskies, if you can address the offensive tackle position in round 2, or maybe you can even get a guy like a Craig Pryor, or maybe you can get a Sonny Daniels in round 3, I think that's a potential spot for them to go. And if that's not what they want to do, well, then I guess you got to look at the edge rushers, right? They're going to have to do something with Lunsford, and they're going to have to do something with defensive tackle. Now, I don't know that defensive tackle is going to be in play. I don't like Jamari Logan at 13 overall. They're not going to be in play for Wyatt Harris. He will be gone. And so if you're going to go defensive tackle, I think you're looking at a second or third round pick with the defensive tackle. And so, okay, fine. If you can get a Jamari Logan or a Joshua Farmer or a Ishmael Ibarra in round 2, maybe you look at a Mike Sizemore, Josh Higgins, Mark Grimes in round 3. Maybe you get lucky and you can hold off and get, one of these guys in round 4. But if you want to go edge, then you got to start looking here. And, when you look at Ethan Marks and you look at Manny Rojas and possibly even Russell Shackelford, maybe Randy Wilson, like those guys might already be gone at 13. Right. So certainly you got to figure Ethan Marks and Manny Rojas are going to be gone. Ethan Marks for sure. Maybe there's a world where Manny Rojas falls to 13. But I got to figure he's going to go before then. And so do they go edge at 13? Or Russell Shackelford makes a lot of sense, right? If you're the Huskies and you want to replace that edge rusher in Calvin Lunsford, well, then maybe you look at a Russell Shackelford. Maybe you look at a Randy Wilson, right? Like maybe that's the path that you want to go. If you're not going edge rush, like I said, I don't believe defensive tackle is the way to go in round 1. And then we've got the 2 guys in the secondary that they're going to have to look to replace at some point in Robert Staymates at safety. And so if you wanted to, I think you could get Juan Reeden. I think you could go first round Juan Reeden if you wanted to, if you're the Huskies. I don't think you're going to have to go first round for a Micah Harper. I don't think you're going to have to go first round for a Kyrie Sims. If you wanted to go strong safety, a Diamond Armani, that's another name that could be potentially in play at 13. Kong Morris, I think he's possibly a first rounder. I just don't like him at 13. So I think you're better off trying to wait and hope if you want to go safety in the early rounds. Then I think you probably wait and hope that you can get a guy like a Kong Morris, a Devontae Freezer, a Micah Harper, Kyrie Sims. Maybe you can get one of those guys in round, 2, maybe round 3. And then the cornerback position, if you were looking to replace Javonte Gibson, well, then again, round 1 options at 13 overall. Maybe you can get a Jack Sky. I think Xavier Savage is gone by then. I think Jack Sky is probably gone by then, but maybe not. I think there might be some character issues with Jack Sky. Like maybe he's sliding down some people's draft board. But a guy like Brian Robinson certainly is a name that could be in play. And then you got users like Kenzo Udo, Elijah Carter, JoJo Carter. And then you fall back to a couple generics and Vinny Ball and Brandon Cherry. So regardless, the Huskies have a lot that they need to address. Whether they want to address certain positions early, like a round 1 or a round 2, or whether they want to wait and they want to get some of those guys a little bit later on, there are needs that the Huskies have. And I would have liked to have seen, I think, like an amazing scenario for me is the Huskies have 13 overall. The Huskies trade down from 13 to the back half of the first round, get a later first round pick, and then let's hypothetically say somewhere in the 20s, right? Like 22, 24, 25, 26. Like if the Huskies are able to trade back into the first round, right, and get additional draft capital. I don't know what that's going to look like, but let's just hypothetical. Let's say they could move from 13 overall back to like 25 or 26 overall. And in doing so, get an additional second round pick, maybe a second and a third round pick, an early second round pick, right? And now you've got some more draft capital early on, because again, there are 5 positions that we just went over at minimum that the Huskies are going to have to address either in this draft during the season or immediately in free agency, because all those names that we mentioned are free agents or they're 31, 32, 33 years old and possibly retiring, or they're regressing quite a bit. So a lot of areas that I think the Huskies have to address. It remains to be seen what they're going to do. Again, the first round of the RFL draft is Friday night. So round 1 will be on Friday night. And then I believe we're going to have rounds 2 and 3 on Saturday. And then rounds 4 through 7 will be on Sunday. So that's the Toronto Huskies draft preview. 7 picks in the draft, their own pick in each round, the 13th pick in each round. What do you think the Toronto Huskies are going to do? Comment in the comment section down below. And again, guys, be sure to hit the bell notification so you can get updates when all these team previews drop, and hit the subscribe button. That is greatly appreciated as well. So until next time, in case you haven't caught on, the Chicago Cougars already dropped. The Toronto Huskies are right here. I am doing the ARC North. So I will have the Pittsburgh Pioneers and then also the Cincinnati Hogs will be the next 2 teams in the draft preview. So we'll see you guys then, and take care, everybody.